Everybody, welcome to HackerKast. HackerKast is where we get together and we talk about everything that happened in the last week in the application security industry, because this space is really difficult to keep up with. Always new hacks, always new hacking techniques. And with me, as always, I got Robert R. Snake Hansen and Matt Johansson, both in Texas. And today we're going to just jump right into it, and we're going to talk about a couple of stories here. One was pretty interesting. This is the GCHQ using Lovely Horse to monitor hackers' Twitter feed. So, Robert, why don't you walk us through this one? First, What is GCHQ exactly?
Yeah, it's basically the British version of the Secret Service kind of thing, or the CIA or NSA, one of those. It's a little hard to keep them all separate, but they wrote a program to basically scrape basically hackers' Twitter feeds. But the weird part wasn't so much that they're doing it. I mean, I would expect every government to be pulling every piece of data down that they possibly can. It might be even somewhat interesting. But it was how few. It was only about like 30, 40 or so total names, like OX Charlie, Alex Sotorov, some anonymous stuff, OWASP, which is kind of interesting for web app stuff. And the idea was that they can use this to figure out who's been compromised and look at data dumps, because that group apparently they feel is pretty bad describing that kind of stuff.
It was I was reviewing the list. It was pretty funny. On one hand, you got OWASP, and the other part you have Mirko Hyponen, and then you have Kevin Mitnick.
Yeah, it's a weird list. I think a lot of people take exception to the word hacker when they're talking about some of these people. Not deferential to their abilities or who they are or whatever, but not necessarily hackers. So. It was a weird list. Now, keep in mind this was from 2012, so maybe they've increased it to, I don't know, more than 30 in the last couple of years, but still interesting.
All right, so we had another story here. This is a big one. This made all the news, and this is when Anthem, healthcare insurance company, got hacked. Brian Krebs first broke the story, as he normally does. Anytime Brian Krebs breaks the story, you know it's going to give somebody a really bad day. But he is a badass when it comes to cybersecurity reporting, especially on the fraud and the bad guy side. So anyway, Anthem apparently had disclosed through Anthem Facts, a new website they stood up, that could be as up to 80 million people have their healthcare contact information stolen. So this is a little interesting. So it looks like Social Security numbers, names, birth dates, personal information, but not healthcare or credit card data was stolen. So we don't exactly know how the bad guys broke in, but I guess they do have a pretty good idea of what the bad guys got. But it wasn't credit cards and it wasn't health information. So we're going to see how this works itself out. But the recent story is that the FBI is involved, and there's speculation that China did it. I don't know why China would do it, but it seems like they're always the boogeyman, which is not to say they aren't doing stuff, but I don't know why. I still can't really grasp, other than counterintelligence, why they'd be going after healthcare data.
Yeah, maybe they can use it for figuring out what sort of individuals are more likely to be flipped. People with very large healthcare bills, tend to be more susceptible to bribes and honeypots and all kinds of stuff. So. If you have injuries that are related to something that may be very contentious or sexual, maybe they could use it to blackmail you or all kinds of other things. So who knows?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The blackmail part I think is pretty interesting, right? There's certain sensitive areas of private healthcare information, and if you're like a public figure and you don't want to know that you had to go get a penicillin shot for something.
But in that case, I could see going after the healthcare data. But in this case, they only got the personal information, not the healthcare stuff. So I don't know. Part of me thinks this might be cybercrime related. You get to do identity theft on other sites or something like that, because they got birth dates, social security numbers, but not passwords and things like that. So maybe it's part of another hack.
Yeah, I think that's actually a fair assessment. A lot of times those two things, especially birthday and social, last four social, are used as your other password or whatever. So if you have that, you can do things like reset your password on a bunch of different types of sites. So that easily could be a staging to a much bigger thing. In fact, I've talked about this quite a bit. previously, but I mean, there's really nothing stopping a large government from doing long-term reconnaissance on every single person and saying who marries who, and then that offspring figuring out what the maiden name was. So suddenly you have this massive directory of everybody's mother's maiden name. It's at an internet scale. That's definitely something I could see a government doing. Why not?
So it looks like one way or the other, everybody's a target. Everybody from banks, healthcare, e-commerce, small businesses, large businesses, and again, like we said earlier, it's kind of the state of things out there. So hack yourself first, as we like to say. So this kind of just shows you what's going on out there. But it seemed actually they found the incident fairly quickly within a month or two. And like before, it's usually like a matter of years before an incident is known. So that was good. So I guess things were getting better in that sense, which is a strange way to look at the world.
Absolutely.
So speaking of related hacks, is that let's jump to TurboTax, Robert. So I think this story came up, and identity theft as it relates to TurboTax and online fraud.
Yeah, so I've talked to some people who work in this space pretty significantly, and it sounds like a pretty boring area of computer security, but it actually might be one of the single largest, if not even the largest, area of crime in terms of sheer dollars, which was pretty surprising when I heard these numbers. But there's some estimates that some of these crews are able to steal on the neighborhood, and I know these numbers sound crazy, but like $4+ billion annually using basically just identity theft and filing people's taxes on their behalf, getting the refund pointed back to wherever, Estonia or Romania or wherever it is, and then you do it enough times. I think it's worth something like 10 grand on average or something as a refund, or it's less than that, maybe 3 grand or something on average. But you multiply that out by hundreds of thousands of people, and you start talking some really seriously large numbers.
And I got to imagine the fraud delay is pretty easy to get away with. Like you file a tax return, the check comes a few months later, you cash it. By the time anybody figures out what happened, the bad guy's long gone with the cash.
Right, exactly. And they can kind of keep doing it. It's not really clear whose fault it is, with the exception of the fact that this is a bit of a conspiracy theory, so take it with a huge grain of salt. But this also is a gigantic area of money coming in for tax preparers. They make money on people preparing their taxes through their system. So if they make it really easy for fraud to go through their system, it becomes a very large profit center, not a area of loss. So it's really difficult to make them want to fix these flaws. And so I think this is the first time they're sort of having to think about it because it made so much news.
Huh. And so while we're on the subject of losses, Sony actually, Matt was covering this. Sony had an interesting statement because they filed earnings. What is it, Q1 or Q4 earnings? I forget which one. And what was interesting is that they needed more time as a result of last year's incident to file their earnings because there was a system shutdown. So Matt, what was going on here?
Yeah, this is super interesting. So, we covered this whole Sony hack back in December now. For those of you who don't remember, I mean, they got completely shut down. Like just all the computers on their network even got shut down, and then they lost how many movies was it? Five movies, including the big interview controversy. And so they detailed today in like a preliminary earnings report that the whole incident cost them $15 million in that quarter in investigation and remediation costs. And like the way the news was reporting about this is like, oh wow, it cost them $15 million. I think that's way, way low. I don't know what you guys think. I think that's
Yeah, I wonder what they counted, because I thought that was, that struck me as really, really low. I heard much higher figures speculated, but do they have to break it down? I mean, what does it count, not count?
I mean, this is investigation remediation costs is what it's outlined as. So I don't know, but I mean,
investigation remediation. I mean, that's a lot of incident responders. That's a lot of investigation. I mean, you'd say they had an army of 50 there, and I really don't know much about it, but. Maybe that's about right. $15 million on response costs, maybe.
Yeah, as long as you don't count actual loss, I think that may be close to the right number, but only for that quarter. I think ongoing, that could keep going up pretty substantially.
Because in that number, they didn't count replacement of machines, they didn't count lawsuits and fines and business downtime and all those sorts of things. So if you just strict loss and incident and investigation, yeah, I could buy that number.
Yeah, maybe.
Minus loss.
Yeah, no loss. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you take loss out of it. Because I think there was even one actress who was able to renegotiate her contract based on the information that came out of that, and made millions of dollars more a year, which was putting her on parity with a male counterpart actor or whatever. So right there, that would be a huge percentage of that number. So I just don't. That can't be right. It's got to not include loss.
Yep. But the kind of the funny part, to put the icing on this, let me get the right number. Their profit for the quarter was 1.5 billion, which doubled year over year. So, but
Grand Theft Auto all the way. It's all about Grand Theft Auto. All right, let's see here. Let's cover this GPG story. So, news broke out. What was it? Late last week, early this week, that the guy that was Werner Koch, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, the guy behind GPG and a bunch of other crypto tools, was basically running this software as a charity. I mean, lots of email encryption is based on the work that he does, and he just couldn't raise funds, couldn't make the money, and was going to basically abandon the project. So then the story came out that this guy, it was just one guy doing all of GPG and related tools. There was a big cry out for funding, and so Matt, what happened here?
Well, you covered most of it.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, it turns out he was making about $25,000 a year.
Crap.
On this.
Yeah.
And for the past,
he should have become a waiter.
Yeah. So he lives in Germany. He made about on average $25,000 a year for the past 14 years. And yeah, GPG is pretty much the crux of a lot of secure communications on the internet. It's super popular. It's been super popular forever, and he's one of the proponents of free and open software. If you think about it, 14 years ago. Yeah, so there's kind of this cry for help of people kind of waking up and realizing, hey, we all rely pretty heavily on using this software that this poor chap has been basically giving up for free for 14 years, and the internet raised about $150,000 for him, including Stripe and Facebook sponsoring the development of GPG for $50,000 a year each. So there's $100,000 a year between the two of them.
And that's just them. I mean, he raised a lot more money from a lot of other people.
Yeah, there's another about $50,000 from additional people for this one-time goal, and then from just Stripe and Facebook, he's got 6 figures coming in per year. But yeah, I mean that $25,000 a year was just donations that other people just gave donations on the webpage. If you ever ended up on that webpage, so yeah.
So score for the internet. We helped out one of the good guys.
Absolutely.
So let's jump to let's see one last story here. This is something Robert brought up. This iPhone iPad app rating rig. So what's this, Robert?
Yeah. So if you want to sell something for like $10 or something, you have to have a lot of people who say this app is worth looking at for 2 reasons. One, they're more likely to buy it, and 2, it's more likely to end up on the high-end list of things that people are searching for because more people have it installed, and so it sort of raises you in the search engine rankings inside when you're searching for applications. So basically, it makes you a lot more money if you rank higher. So there's some people in China who have like these huge banks of like iPhones or iPads or whatever, where they're just sort of like going through and clicking on stuff like all day long and using those applications. To the point where they can get that sort of pop-up window, like rate this thing or whatever, use it enough, and eventually the whole thing will pop up. So I talked to some of my bad guy friends, and they're actually interested in creating like virtual machines of the same concept. So different EMIE numbers or whatever, different profiles. They look like separate devices, and then basically automatically doing that, as opposed to having a human go through and do all that stuff, which seems terribly inefficient, but
So this is kind of like a CAPTCHA farm, but for app ratings.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I can't imagine China's going to have the only operation. It's got to be in India as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure pretty much every minimum wage in whatever country location would make sense as long as you can make more money off of it than it costs you to employ those people.
So to get an app to be top rated, about how many ratings is that? A few dozen, 100 or two maybe?
Yeah, it's probably in the hundreds. I don't think, or maybe even low thousands. But that's not too difficult to do. If once people start downloading it, it'll sort of naturally happen. So you just kind of keep the ratings very high.
All right, and we got one last story. This is from Matt, who's working on the top 10. So what's the top 10, Matt, and what are you looking to help on?
Yeah, we chatted about it last week a little bit for anyone who listened last week, but I'm going to pimp it again because we have one more week of open voting. So the top 10, for those of you who aren't familiar, is we get together all of the new web hacking techniques of the year. It's usually a massive list, and who can keep up with all that crap? And so yeah, Arsnake's raising his hand. So if you're not Arsnake and you would like to keep up with this stuff, no. So we kind of put it all in one place. We try to make one master list, and that's all community sourced. And right now we're in open vote to try to narrow that down to the top 15 of the. I think we've got about 50. So we're trying to rule out a bunch of them and get them down to the top 15, and then we're going to have an expert panel of judges come and pick the top 10 and order them, and then I give a presentation about the results, and we put a blog post about the results and all this kind of stuff, and it's kind of TLDR, cliff notes of 10 of kind of the deepest dive stuff, and it's usually really, really nitty-gritty encryption work and stuff like that. So it's usually fun to read up on this stuff really quick. So.
Yeah, a few people appreciate how much effort it takes to put the top 10 list together, to be an expert in everybody else's research and rating it. But it's also probably the highest acclaimed thing at White Hat we do as far as educational or outreach. We've been doing the top 10 since 2006 or so, and everybody always loves it because it's kind of like an easy way to get up to speed on all the the super sophisticated stuff that happened during the last year, because there's no way anybody can read and assimilate it all.
Yep, so I'll include the link to the survey in the blog post and the YouTube description here. And yeah, we'd love if anyone listening could go vote for their favorites.
Right on. I can't wait to see that one, actually. I'd always love that presentation.
Yeah, we've got Heartbleed, we got Poodle, we got Shellshock, we got all sorts of cool.
That's 3 logos right there.
My slides make themselves, man. This is great.
All right, thanks everybody. Thanks Robert. Thanks Matt for another great HackerKast. Everybody, hey, subscribe, rate, and we appreciate your support. If you have stories you want us to cover, let us know.